Hello and welcome again to Nobody Gets That Reference with Thermal and Fizzy.
So today we're going to be talking about something a little unusual, not necessarily related to the footage we're getting, which is going to be Plunder in Modern Warfare, and very fun game mode that I personally love because it's theft. And theft in a video game is like the ultimate fantasy fulfillment. But anyways, today we're going to be talking about unnamed, very minor characters in movies who have left an impression. Now, by this, we don't mean that people like the man with no name from the Dollars trilogy, who's the main character, who just doesn't have a name. We don't mean like, a celebrity is cast in a role and they have a few lines and it's like important they're there. We mean things more like the Enrico Palazzo guy from Naked Gun, who's just a random guy up in the stands who goes, "Hey, it's Enrico Palazzo!" And, well, you should all know what we're talking about there. Characters who were tiny but made a big difference.
Yeah, I think and also we're going to try to focus on characters that haven't been retconned to be important. Disney and Star Wars, we're looking at you with the Ice Cream Man. If you don't know who that is, Google it. It's actually quite interesting. So we're going to be focusing on characters who never really get any backstory, usually don't even get a name in the script, but they provide a memorable moment that sticks with you even after the movie is over.
Yeah. I mean...
You want to go first?
Sure, I'll go. I think a good example is... Now, in the film John Wick, there are many henchmen throughout who leave an impression, but, well, some of them don't leave an impression, but this one guy does. He's a big guy with a beard. He leaves an impression because I think it's really funny because John hits him over the head with a bottle and then actually grabs him by his beard and throws him down on a table to shoot him, which is kind of funny enough, but then you find out that stuntman, at about the same time, was also in The Equalizer and The Accountant, which those aren't movies that I enjoy as much as I do John Wick, but it's just funny to me that he was in all three of them at the same time and made a big deal out of it.
This one stuntman got beat up by 3 different action stars in 3 different movies. And it's clearly him, because you can see the beard and you can make out, and it's hilarious.
Another action movie example I have is... Technically, this guy has a name. He's not quite unnamed. I know his name from seeing him on IMDb, but Uli from Die Hard, who is the Asian terrorist with them, who, at one brief lull during the shootout, breaks open a little, glass, or reaches under a desk and grabs a candy bar in one of the funniest just interludes in that film.
No, I definitely agree with you. I think Die Hard's a great film for this, because I don't think any of the henchmen have names, or
they all have names.
Oh,
at least you can find them. At least they did in the script.
Anyway, the African American guy who's the hacker, would you consider him to be a minor enough character?
Oh, I think he's a rather major character, but we can still talk about him.
I mean, that's probably fair. But something like a Die Hard is the perfect kind of movie for this sort of thing. It's a larger ensemble cast, which has a it's got your major stars, your Bruce Willis, oh my God,
Alan Rickman,
and your Alan Rickman. Thank you. I feel shame for forgetting that. But then it has a bunch of other little people in it as well, like the that woman who's talking to Holly McClain in the beginning. She's like, "Oh man, this baby's ready to 10 bar." Like that's pretty funny. My probably the funniest one I could think of, actually, is a gentleman from the tea house scene in Kill Bill. The gentleman who owns the tea house, who has no name, but is derogatorily referred to by the rest of the Crazy 88 as Charlie Brown, because he wears a yellow... I don't know if it's kimono? Exactly a kimono, but he wears a yellow tunic with this brown stripe on it, and he's bald. And they make a whole joke out of it. And it's an interesting thing because it's a moment of levity that comes right before probably one of the most violent scenes in a Tarantino movie. So it's kind of that sort of duality that Tarantino is so good at between the sort of ultra-violence, but at the same time you also have sort of moments of incredible levity and humor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I guess just to circle back to Die Hard for a minute, I was just reminded during this conversation that it's a random unnamed character at the beginning who he's on the plane with, who tells him to take off his shoes and roll his toes on the carpet, which, well, we all know how that turns out.
Yeah, it turns to be one of the most important things in the movie because of this random character. Now, as you know, I tried to get you the act of taking off shoes for Christmas, but I couldn't figure out how to wrap it. So I got you this Die Hard, this Die Hard tank top instead.
Yes,
I hope that's okay.
Thank you so much, and thank you for doing that, even though we had said no gifts.
Yeah. But this doesn't just extend to movies. Like, there are plenty of video games with unnamed characters who are sort of particularly minor or interesting. Some of them have even, I think a lot of them have even sort of become memes over the years. What's a good example of something like that?
Mom, the best example, so famous, I don't know if it even counts, is I used to be an adventurer like you, and then I took an arrow to the knee. Just random Bethesda dialogue can really
Todd
be part
Howard.
of that.
Todd Howard, by the way, responded to that. Like, he was like, I'm going to talk about that guard without prompting. Like, someone wasn't like, hey, Todd Howard, what's up with the guard on Twitter? He's like, I'm just going to talk about this guard and say, yeah, it's like no more regular than any of the other lines. But because it's more memorable than just like, oh, someone stole your sweet roll. Then, which I think is a memorable line on its own.
That's a running joke throughout the series.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, I wouldn't want to touch the sweet rolls in Fallout because they look like a burned, glazed hamburger patty. But,
yeah.
But yeah, so these minor characters that really bring opportune moments. The take an arrow to the knee guy is pretty good. I'm trying to think of someone from Fallout.
Well, there's I don't know how much this counts, but in Fallout 4, there's Grenade Guy, who you don't even see. You can just hear about if you spy on the raiders.
Oh, and then there's also the guy who's supposed to be... Is that the guy who makes all the noises?
Yeah, who runs up and is just like... and runs away.
Yeah, and he's just throwing rocks. That's a reference to Police Academy.
It is?
And the guy making all the car noises in Police Academy.
That does make sense.
That is a game full of references on its own. I think another probably, although he has a name, so I don't know, Shooty McShootface in Borderlands, where it's like, shoot this guy in the head. He's like, come on, shoot me in the head, shoot me in the head, shoot me in the head, ah! And then you just
knock, knock, shoot me in the face.
Yeah.
End of joke.
And then you shoot him and you get like 10 or 12 grand and a really nice gun.
After you shoot him after his death, he just shouts out ethereally, thank you!
Yeah.
So, which is rather impressive.
Not Shooty McShootface, not to be confused with Bodie McBokeface.
Yes, who is a minor named character in real life.
Yeah.
A small research sub attached to... What did they end up calling that ship? Do you remember? The boring.
It was really.
Ship
it's like
name.
the SS like Drawbin or something like that. It was totally boring.
There's no Bodie McBoatface.
It sure was not.
Yeah.
Another character actually from Kill Bill is Hattori Anzo's assistant when they're in the sushi bar, and he talks about he's like, oh, I'm not bald. I just shaved my head, and he's trying to flirt with Uma Thurman, and then Hattori Hanzo throws the sushi knife at him. Again, another moment of levity in this like really dark film about going to kill this guy because he killed you and your baby. Like, Tarantino, man, I don't know how you do it.
A great example of minor character. Well, I guess this is we said we wouldn't be talking about celebrities being cast in roles, but this kind of...
I mean, we're making the rules here. So.
This falls under that because it's in Star Wars The Force Awakens, you got the two guys from the raid in the different games. The guy who was the main character, his name is slipping my mind, and Mad Dog as the two gangs fighting over the Rathtars. And then in John Wick 3, you got Mad Dog again, and that was just great that he was one of the henchmen.
Yeah.
And they used him well, unlike in Force Awakens where they're just there. Like,
I gotta say, The Mad Dog was nice. This was definitely a major character. But just to pivot to John Wick, because I think maybe that's what we really want to talk about. Zero. I mean, come on. From a guy who you probably knew from Iron Chef and from his really enthusiastic method of shouting out secret ingredient. Today's secret ingredient is beer! That was like his whole thing. To now being like, oh, I'm a super trained killer in John Wick. It's hilarious.
It is pretty
he's
great.
a fantastic actor, I think.
And
but it was great to see him in this.
That character is so fun with the... I've been waiting a long time to meet you, and I gotta say, so far, you haven't disappointed. He's runs this squad of, super serious, deadly ninjas, and he's, such, a fanboy, and he's not at all serious. John's new, pit bull comes up and sits on him, and he's like, wait, is that the dog? Is that the dog? Oh, tell me that's the dog. He's great. He's like me in a John Wick movie.
Yeah, he's every one of the audience, if they were to be put in a John Wick film. Yeah, do you think they're going to make a John Wick 4?
Oh yeah, it's been greenlit. I think it might have even started shooting at some point.
I mean, everything's been cut off because of Corona.
Yeah.
But John Wick 4, yeah, that'll be quite something, I think.
I mean, it'll be nice because John Wick 3 was kind of disappointing. I mean, you don't go to these movies for story, but at the same time, plot-wise, you just end up back where you started at the end of John Wick 3, that was kind of that.
I think it's because John Wick 1 was a smash success. John Wick 2, I think people thought was okay, and the numbers for 3 were very similar to the numbers for 1 again. So people are kind of realizing, yeah, I believe so.
I thought they were much higher.
Either way,
one
it was
40 million. I think 2 is 80 million, and I think 3 was in the hundreds of millions.
You're probably right, but either way, it was. They saw enough numbers that they're like, we're gonna get a sequel, so write it as though you're gonna have a sequel, and that's why sort of nothing really happened in 3. We had a lot of great stuff, introduced. Yeah. We had more of the high table. Had Geisha Kate Dillon's character, which was just incredible, and it was awesome to see them on screen. Representation was great, but I think it was written specifically with sort of there being a 4th John Wick movie in mind.
Oh, definitely. I
don't want to be the stickler, but when he fell off the roof at the end, no, I wasn't. Just because that's not John Wick. John Wick is not the crazy ultimate super fantasy everyone can do anything movie. It's a realistic movie where people count bullets and you use knives the right way. The scene in the armory with those with the knives and axes, how some of them would hit handle first and do no damage. That was so setting up this is going to be the super realistic movie. And yet at the end, he falls off a building and lives. I mean, I guess it's John has plot armor and is indestructible, so it's fine. But
but they didn't have to throw him off a building.
Yeah.
They could have just, or I don't know, they could have had him maybe catch his way on the balcony on the way down and then follow the rest of the way. Or something to just make that less wow, he should be very dead. But
definitely.
I was about to say something. About.
Thanks
I think
for
it was about
me.
John Wick. In fact. In the first, if you think about it, in the first movie, they really weren't going for him to be this fantasy god character, because the thing that I always think is amazing about him in the first movie is for someone whose main thing is using guns, he's not a perfectly accurate shot. He's probably realistically the best someone could get, but he misses plenty of shots, and his whole thing is about closing distance and essentially stunning people so he can get a kill shot on them without necessarily having to shoot them from across the room.
Yeah, definitely. The club scene in 1, going through the red circle, was probably one of the best sort of gunfight set pieces in any movie ever, I would say. Now, that's a bold claim, and if you disagree with me, put it in comments, we'll talk. But I think that was so good. And then I think from the shootout in the subway with Cassian, you kind of saw things starting to go downhill.
Yeah, that was a bit over the top.
Their fight with the knives in the subway was great.
Oh.
But the shootout beforehand shouldn't have happened. It should have been just dirty looks, and someone should have, like, drawn the gun to been like, oh, there's a lot of civilians around.
Yeah.
I'm just going to wait for the knife kill on the platform or something.
I mean, I feel like you, even if by some chance their suppressors were good enough, you wouldn't hear literal gunshots in the subway that you're in. You'd start to see bullet holes like start to appear. It would really just take one person to notice it and then be like, what's going on? And then you have a panic. And
yeah,
I could have played with that. And
I mean, are people in New York really that on their phones? I don't know. It's a good question.
Yeah. And it's amazing to me in that scene that they're able to, they're inaccurate enough that they don't hit each other, but they're accurate enough that they don't end up accidentally shooting anyone else. It's quite something.
Yeah. But John Wick 3 was good, and I suspect that 4 will probably be as good.
Yeah.
I think it's going to go for a more international vibe again.
If what you're looking for is fighting, then it's going to be good. They're going to find new creative ways to do it. I mean, John Wick 3 and John Wick 1 was essentially just basically gun fu throughout, and then John Wick 2 was essentially, we're just going to do that again, but we're going to raise the stakes a bit. And, well, there was a bit of a car chase sort of thing at the very beginning, which was cool, but... And then John Wick 3, it's really, there's like the knife fight in the museum that you mentioned, which is unlike nothing I've ever seen before.
The horse kick.
Yeah, there's the horses. Talk about minor characters that left an impact. Those horses.
They certainly left an impact on that guy's ribs.
Ooh. Yeah. Probably the deadliest weapon John Wick has ever used is just a horse.
Yeah.
Just 100%, kicking someone with it.
100% accuracy. So, KD, like 3-0. So, ultimately, what character would you like to see in John Wick 4 that we have not seen yet?
I mean, I guess a really old assassin who's lived in that world for a while. I mean, you kind of had that in John Wick 1 with Marcus, Willem Dafoe's character, but like John Wick 1, they didn't have all that same lore established that they do now. It was very simple in comparison, and so they didn't really play with the idea of him being able to survive in this complicated, turbulent world for a long time, and I figure you could have that be someone who John has to go up against, essentially someone who got the same deal John did in the desert, but took it and became a killer dedicated entirely to the high table and been that for decades.
That could be very interesting to watch. I think you're right. I'd like to see, as much as this is like so stupid, I think it would be interesting to see much more sort of like the internal machinations part. How in John Wick 3 we got to see the sort of the Continental Coin Factory in Morocco, and we got to see sort of a little bit of how the organization operates, and that might be interesting, especially if, you know, we've assumed that the High Table is like a worldwide organization, but maybe they're not the only ones. Maybe there's another organization that's vying for sort of control, and so there's always a low-level kind of conflict between these assassin groups sort of going on, and then we might get to see that more. I don't know. I think it's getting a little ridiculous, and I'd kind of like if it pulled it back in. Like John Wick 2 is kind of like, oh hey, like 1 out of every 5 people in New York is an assassin.
Yeah, that ending was quite something.
Yeah, so we placed 9th, did a pretty decent job on that match.
We got gold, apparently, and that's new. I don't really know what that means.
I think it's just a ranking thing. I think anyone in the top 10 gets gold. Any final things you'd like to say?
Plunder is fun. Play it.
It is. Well, Like, comment, subscribe. Thank you for watching, and we will see you all in the next one.
Thank you.